Most of us watching this video are only alive today because of one man. A man who had a single idea that saved billions of people around the world. And yet, ironically enough, that same man is considered one of the worst monsters in history. Meet Fritz Haber, born in Prussia, modern-day Poland. He grew up in a rapidly industrializing city that would later become the heart of the German Empire. Back then, the world was competing on scientific discoveries. Being a scientist in his world was like being a tech visionary today. You were the architect of the future. The Habers were a well-off Jewish family. His father, Siegfried Haber, was a successful merchant who dealt in dyes, paints, and pharmaceuticals. This is key. Haber grew up surrounded by the smell of chemistry. Chemicals weren't just abstract formulas to him that he learned in school. They were the environment that surrounded him. Haber grew up in a liminal space. He was Jewish in a nation that was increasingly nationalistic. To many in that era, Jewishness was seen as an obstacle to full Germanness. What was Haber's solution? It was assimilation. He converted to Christian Lutheranism. He didn't do this necessarily out of religious conviction, but out of a deep-seated desire to belong. He wanted to be more German than the Germans. It was this engine, his identity crisis, that drove him forward. He believed that through science, he could become indispensable to the state. You see, he wasn't just working for a paycheck. He was working for a sense of home, a sense of belonging somewhere. Fritz Haber, the motherless boy, tried to fill the void with the approval of a cold father and a demanding empire, both of whom had very high expectations. By the late 1890s, the world was going into a frenzy. Mass famine was now in sight. You see, for centuries, humans had been using manure to fertilize their crops, relying almost entirely on animal waste. But this had a fatal flaw. You cannot create new life out of thin air this way. You are just moving the nitrogen in your manure in an endless circle. You feed the cow poops, the poop feeds the plant feeds the cow. You can never grow more food than the amount of nitrogen already in your local circle. And this was a problem, a big one. Europe's population was exploding, farmers were pushing the land too hard, the soil was dying, and there wasn't enough manure in the world to recharge it. And this is where Fritz Haber comes to shine. This was his chance to prove he could be beneficial to the German state. He knew that solving this problem would make Germany's name sparkle on the map, and that the Jew from Prussia could become the ultimate German hero. Fritz Haber was determined to solve this crisis. He had the right idea in his head, but it was extremely difficult to pull off. You see, humans were walking through a sea of nitrogen. It makes up 78% of the air, but we simply couldn't catch it because it's locked in place. Nitrogen molecules are held together by a triple bond, one of the strongest handshakes in the universe. Nature only breaks this bond at extreme temperatures, say 30,000-degree lightning bolts. So, how did Haber break that handshake? Well, he did something genius, albeit extremely dangerous. He reached the heat of a lightning bolt in his own lab. He created a literal hell on earth inside his small lab. He almost lost his life several times, but it didn't matter. To him, the reward far surpassed the risk. In layman terms, Haber pumped hydrogen and nitrogen into a steel chamber and squeezed them with incredible forces. He then blasted the gases to 500 degrees Celsius, almost 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And finally, he added the secret sauce. Certain metals, like osmium and iron, provided a surface where the stubborn nitrogen could finally let go of its partners and bond with hydrogen. The result? A pungent liquid called ammonia. If you ever passed next to fertilizer, then you'd know that stomach-turning scent very well. And so, for the first time in human history, we were no longer waiting for a cow to poop. We were creating the building blocks of life out of thin air. Europe was now free to expand and industrialize, and the world was saved by the new German hero, Fritz Haber. Fritz Haber's name was now carved into the bedrock of science. But in the halls of power in Berlin, they didn't see a humanitarian. They saw a man who could conjure resources out of nothing. We're now in the summer of 1914, and the world is about to change. World War I, aka the Great War. The gears of the German Empire began to turn for war. And Haber, the man who had just saved the world, was about to find out that a country doesn't want a savior. It wants a soldier. For Haber, this wasn't a tragedy, it was the ultimate promotion. During the war, Germany found itself in a lethal chokehold. The British Navy had blockaded the Atlantic, cutting off the supply of nitrates from South America. Without those nitrates, Germany couldn't make gunpowder for its guns. The German war machine was months away from a total collapse. But they had Fritz Haber, who realized that the same silos he built to create life could be repurposed to create death. He became so valuable that he was promoted to director of the Ministry of War's chemistry department. He transformed from a civilian professor into a military mastermind. And driven by a desperate need to be the hero who ended the war for Germany, Haber proposed a horrific solution. If you couldn't shoot the enemy out of their trenches, you could simply replace the air around them with poison. He chose chlorine gas. It was cheap, plentiful, and much heavier than air, meaning it would sink directly into the trenches where the soldiers slept. And on April 22, 1915, at the Belgian city of Ypres, Haber watched through his binoculars as 168 tons of chlorine gas were released from cylinders. Instantly, he saw a sickly, yellow-green cloud drifting from the battlefield. And because chlorine gas reacts with water to form acid, it literally began to dissolve the wet tissue of the soldiers' lungs. Men stood on dry land, clawing at their throats, drowning in their own fluids. Finally, the gas cleared. The scene was horrific. Over 5,000 French soldiers lay dead. And yet, he didn't feel shame. Instead, he felt the thrill of a successful experiment. During the war, Haber returned to Berlin as a hero, celebrated by the German Kaiser. But he returned to a ghost house. His wife, Clara Immerwahr, was also a brilliant chemist, the first woman in Germany to earn a PhD in the field. She was a humanitarian who saw her husband's work as a perversion of the soul. To Clara, science was a quest for truth. To Fritz, it was a quest for power. In May 1915, Clara took her husband's service pistol, went into the garden, and unalived herself. She was found by their 13-year-old son. Did Haber mourn his wife and give her an honorable burial? I think you know the answer to that by now. The very next morning, before his wife's body was even cold, Haber was on a train headed for the Eastern Front to supervise another gas attack against the Russians. He had a war to win, and in his mind there was no room for the weakness of grief. The final chapter of Haber's life is a masterclass in historical irony. By 1918, Germany had lost the Great War, and the German Empire came crumbling down. Haber was briefly placed on a list of war criminals and fled to Switzerland to hide from the Allies. In 1919, the world was still scrubbing the blood from the trenches when it received a shock. Fritz Haber had just won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. It was the equivalent of giving a peace prize to a firing squad. Haber continued to live in Germany as a renowned and wealthy scientist during the 1920s, but his fate would change and his crimes would finally catch up with him. Despite his conversion to Christianity, despite his Nobel-winning fertilizer, and despite the gas clouds he unleashed for the Kaiser, the new rising party in Germany didn't see a German hero. They saw a Jewish scientist. In 1933, the new German government passed laws banning Jews from high-ranking positions. Haber, who had spent his entire life trying to be more German than the Germans, was suddenly told he was an alien in his own country. Broken and humiliated, Haber resigned his position. He became a ghost, wandering through Europe like a nomad. He was rejected by his peers in France and England who still remembered the yellow clouds of Ypres. He was a man loathed by his enemies and betrayed by his friends. And in January 1934, alone in a hotel room in Basel, Switzerland, Fritz Haber's heart finally gave out. He died in exile, just a few miles from the German border he was no longer allowed to cross. It's a real struggle to reconcile the man who fed billions with the man who watched thousands of soldiers choke to death, but the truth is more uncomfortable than that. Haber wasn't a paradox. He was simply a man who had the wrong compass in life. Even when he did the right things, he did them for the wrong reasons. And if we're being brutally honest, we all have a version of Haber's ambition inside of us. We all want to be indispensable. We want the promotion, the status, the attention, the validation. We tell ourselves that once we reach the top, then we'll be happy. But Haber's life is a warning that utility is not the same as virtue. You can be the most useful person in the world. You can literally save the human race from hunger and still be a hollow shell of a human being. Haber was so obsessed with reaching to the top that he lost his wife and children in the process, and his humanity with them. And in the end, the country he sacrificed his soul for didn't even want him. He died in a hotel room, clutching a medal that couldn't keep him warm. Fritz Haber pulled everything he ever wanted out of thin air, only to realize that he was still starving.